What's up, everybody? Don DiMato here, and welcome back to Codecast Live. And today, we're actually going to do something. We're actually going to talk about scope. The reason we're talking about scope today is because in a previous video I did, maybe last week or the week before, I did something weird with a function that used an arrow in there and has to do with scoping. We'll talk about that in the future somewhere in some other video, but to kind of dive into the idea of scoping, we're going to be using some new keywords called let and const. And these keywords are basically able to declare variables in the same way that var would declare a variable. They just happen to deal much closely with this thing called scope. So I'm going to go open up the code pen that we're going to be playing with in here today. And while we get ourselves set up in here, we're just going to go to the JavaScript in here. We'll also go to our console for this. Inspect, please. I want to try to explain what the idea of scope is here. Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff open here. All right. So scoping is basically the idea of containment. It's trying to make sure that things don't leak out into places that they don't really want to, or now, this was really actually difficult for me to kind of grasp, especially as a beginner coder, because I wanted my variables to be kind of available anywhere. Like, why not? Or why have my variables locked into a particular part of the application as opposed to all of it? Like, maybe I need to use this variable somewhere else. I don't know. And it really actually comes down to actually the better performance in memory management later on, where if you only need the variable, use it specifically for that scope, and it's actually much more performant that way. So it's not a terrible, difficult thing to actually begin to grasp. But you might already actually been doing something like this already without really knowing it using the regular keywords like var. So if we were to make something called a global variable, we might just start with like var my name, just like this, and we'll put it as a string as Donnie. So this is a global variable accessible to the entire application, meaning that if I was to make a function like this, like say my name, and I would say console log my name, and then we'll run the function, right? We should see Donnie over here. A little line break. There we go. All right. Now, what's happening here again is that say my name, the function say my name, is finding the my name variable somewhere in our application. It happens to be something global, meaning that it's accessible to the entire application, and because it's outside of the function here. Now, another thing we could, of course, do is we can replace my name with something else. Like we could say my name is Bob instead. And because of the way that this is set up here, it's first going to look at the global scope, and then it's going to look at local scope. Local scope basically means inside of the function, inside between these two curly braces. And now you'll see that it says Bob. Okay? So that's basically the idea of scoping, is that you have your global scope and a local scope, meaning that inside of the curly braces. You can make different local scopes with different curly braces, really. It's actually mostly curly brace generated. So now, what's the deal with let and const, right? Well, let is the exact same thing as var, except that it's scoped. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if I was to say let my age equals 8, well, that's not really my age. Let's make it closer, 37, okay? And then I'll say console log my age. You'll see I could actually see my age, right? It'll pop up there. Perfect. Okay? Now, this means that I can't do this, though. Let's see here. I should be able to say console log my name, which we should be able to see, and then console log my age. Okay, so you see that Donnie still comes up because it's global, but my age doesn't because it's stuck inside of this scope here, inside of this function. Okay? Now, this also probably doesn't run because I'm also setting this over here. So let's make a better example, because I can actually force scope inside of here as well, like with an if statement. So let's do like if my name exists, which it does, we know that already. Then let my age. Well, actually, we'll say my age in here. We'll just do a copy paste in here. Just like this. Cool. Let my age equal 37. Console log my age. And we'll get rid of this stuff because it's probably confusing considering I'm not calling the function until afterwards. Okay, clear that out. Clear it again. And we'll also console log both things down at the bottom. Okay. So, right. So we have Bob here, which again, I'm replacing the name of my name in here. And I can even like comment this out now I'm thinking about it. There we go. So now I'll just say Donnie instead. There we go. So now it's pulling it from global scope over here. And then we have local scope. I'm just checking to see if my name exists. I'm setting a variable of my age here. And you'll see that my name is fine, but my age isn't. Okay. Similarly, if I was to put this into local scope, so I'm going to take this and put this in the local scope, just using the keyword var. Okay. Now, actually, I got to set this to true because it doesn't exist yet. There it goes. Okay. That's much better, probably much clearer. Probably should have did this in the beginning. So this is probably your takeaway right here. All right, so here's your real takeaway. I'm making a local scope inside of this function. The local scope is this thing here, which is where the curly braces are, okay? And I'm just forcing a local scope by just saying if true, because it'll always be true. And I'm doing two variable declarations. I have a variable declaration, which is var my name, and I have a let declaration, which is my age 37, okay? And I'm console logging both. And you'll see that my name appears, but my age doesn't. All right? And that's because the let keyword here is making sure that the my age variable is only used between these two braces. All right? Now, what's this const thing? Well, the const basically says that I can't reassign it. So if I say const, well, I'm just going to make up doesn't change, I guess. And we'll just say 9. I don't know what else to call it right now. Doesn't change. 10 doesn't work. Right? Assignment to constant variable. Can't do that. All right? So you can't reassign this variable to the this value. Sorry, cannot this variable here, which is a const, can't be reassigned. As soon as you declare the const with the variable, with a value. Then you can't change what this thing represents any longer. So you have to kind of keep it. And similarly, this is also scoped. So if I was to go ahead and say console log doesn't change, it doesn't even know what that is. Same thing with my age. Right. So you can see that. Well, first off, it's firing that my age isn't defined, and it's probably just going to error there. Right there. So if I comment this out, because it's just erroring right here, it's going to skip down to this and say doesn't change, is not defined, because again, that's in this scope right here. Okay? And that's the deal with scoping. Again, it's like a little bit of a weird concept to get, again, because it's like, you know, in between these curly braces, like there's certain things that'll happen in here as opposed to like outside in the function or outside in the global scope. But it's something to get used to. Again, you probably already are doing this kind of thing because you're already using variables just kind of where you need them instead of just kind of putting them all over the application. But that happens sometimes. Like even for me, like what'll happen is maybe I'll put the let outside in the global scope somewhere, which is completely accessible to all of its local stuff. And sometimes you know, I'll keep it in the actual scope of work where I'm actually working. So yeah, so that's the general gist of it about scope, is just basically like containment. And again, there's other things that relate to scope. So there's going to be the thing that we're going to talk about probably a little later on, which is the difference between naming a function and having an arrow function. And then there's this thing called this, which is probably going to be a significant video at some point, probably much longer than usual, because it's something that I had to watch like a tutorial, a long one, like an hour-long one, like twice over to understand what this was really doing in the world scheme of classes and constructors and stuff. But not to fear, we'll go through it somehow, and I hope to have something a little bit better curated at that point. But other than that, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for seeing. Later.